Have you ever asked yourself, what if she really is better? Not in some cliché way, but in everything. She laughs better, looks better. Her intuition is more gifted. Even when she gets angry, she does it more beautifully. You walk next to her, and everything seems fine. You laugh at the same memes, hate your exes together, love the same caramel coffee. But at some point when she goes to the bathroom, someone turns to you and says, "Your friend is so cool." And you smile. But inside something cracks. Because you've heard it before. And you already know the rest. It usually goes something like, "I wish I looked like her." Or, "Is she a model?" Or simply a long gaze after her. And then at you. And the comparison. Unspoken. But so loud, not even the music in your headphones can drown it out. You're not jealous. Honestly. Because you're the good one. You're the one who listens. Who picks up the phone at 3 a.m. Who texts first. Who stands by her side when everything falls apart. Who says, "You'll get through this." Even when you don't believe it. You're reliable. You're real. But, is reliability really something people envy? One day, you catch yourself starting to compare. Not on purpose. It just happens. She posts a photo, you scroll through yours. She gets invited somewhere. You suddenly notice you were forgotten. She tells a story about a guy who approached her. And no one has approached you in a while. And even if it's not important, it still hurts. But here's what's strange. She never tries to be better. Never does it on purpose. She doesn't have that female malice some friends use to steal someone else's guy. She just shines. Genuinely. As if she knows some kind of secret. And you're standing next to her. And it's like you're in the shadows. Even though the sun is out. You don't want to admit it. But something is beginning to grow inside you. Something that feels scary. Unpleasant. Because you realize, you're not just comparing anymore. You're starting to lose yourself. And now pay attention. Because this is exactly where the most important thing begins. Right at that moment, when you look at her. And see yourself as a failed copy, a door opens. Not outward. Inward. Because the real question isn't about her. It's about you. You weren't always like this. There was a time when you walked into a room. And the space seemed to freeze. Not because you were the brightest. But because you were yourself. Funny, weird, free. People couldn't explain what drew them to you. But they were drawn. You laughed from the heart. Could cry on a balcony at 4 in the morning. You were real. Unfiltered. And in that there was power. And then she appeared. Not as an enemy. Not as a rival. But as light. Pure, bright, blinding. So beautiful you stopped seeing your own. You didn't notice how you started adjusting. At first just a little. Well, bangs suit her. Maybe I should try too. Then more. She says that show is stupid, strange, I used to love it. And now you no longer know what you actually like. And what is just a reflection of her taste. You start living by a new rule. What would she do? What would she wear? How would she respond? You start to dissolve. There's less of you. More of her. And it's subtle. Almost gentle. No pressure. You're just walking beside her. And more often catching yourself thinking, if only I were like her. And then one day, you look at a photo of the two of you. And you realize, you don't know who you are in it. You've become a shadow. An accessory. A backdrop for her shine. But here's the twist. You think she's better. That she's the ideal. But you don't know her fears. You haven't heard her lying silently into a pillow at night. How she's afraid of being alone. How every day she compares herself, not to you, but to someone who only exists in her own mind. You don't know how much effort it takes her to seem carefree when inside. There's silence and emptiness. She's not better. She's different. And you are different too. But that's not what you're ready to hear. Because to admit that means meeting yourself again. And you haven't looked at yourself honestly for a long time. Without filters. Without other people's opinions. Without that constant. What would she say? And here's the most important part. The one we've been leading up to. The secret not everyone knows. You feel like she's better. Not because she truly is. But because you gave her your power. Slowly. In small things. Smiles when you wanted to cry. Silence when you wanted to scream. Agreeing when you wanted to walk away. You gave it. Because you didn't know you had it. But power, it's not external shine. Not glances from strangers. not likes under photos. Power is being yourself, even when your knees shake, even when no one understands, even when your friend is glowing. Power is knowing, I'm not her. And that is beautiful. You're walking home, slowly, without headphones. The city is buzzing as always, but inside there's silence. Because today, you saw something you can't unsee. She said something innocent. A joke. Light-hearted. Everyone laughed. But inside you, it was like someone turned on the light in a room you hadn't entered in a long time. A flash. A moment. And you realized it can't go on like this. You're tired of hiding. Tired of being convenient. Quiet. Accommodating. Always in second place. Tired of convincing yourself that this is how it's supposed to be. That she's just brighter, luckier, more charismatic. That the world is made up of those who shine. And those who stand beside them holding the flashlight. And then another thought. So simple it's almost scary. What if it's not true? What if she herself thinks you are better? That you have something she doesn't? That ease with which you make friends. Your observance. Your honesty. Maybe that's exactly what drew her to you. Because let's be honest, she needs you too. Intriguing? She might be afraid of you. In her own way. Not because you're louder. But because you're deeper. You sense what others miss. You go quiet when everyone else is talking. You look at people. And see more than they want to show. You don't shine. You glow from within. But so quietly that you forgot about it yourself. And now you're standing in the middle of the street. People are passing by. Laughing. Rushing. And you stand there. And finally hear yourself. Not her voice. Not society's voice. Not the inner critic. But yourself, the real you. She whispers one thing. You're not lesser. And you never were. You're just different. And in that lies your treasure. You don't have to be her. Because she already exists. And you are you. With your shadows. With feelings that don't fit into stories. With kindness that doesn't ask for likes. And here begins the most important part. The turn. The point of no return. Because from this moment on, you stop looking up at her. You look at her, honestly. Straight. Not with resentment. Not with jealousy. But with respect. Because you know, each of you has her own path. And it's not about who's better. It's about who finally becomes herself. You come home and for the first time in a long while, you don't open social media. You don't want to see what she posted, who liked it, who she ran into, how she looked in that photo. Not because you're angry, but because you no longer need to. While the kettle is boiling, you look at your reflection in the microwave. Blurry. Imperfect. Real. And suddenly something strange washes over you. Unfamiliar. As if someone you lost long ago is returning to you. The real you. The one who used to laugh until tears. Who wrote strange texts at 3 a.m. when no one was around. Who wasn't afraid to wear a ridiculous hat or confess her feelings. The one you once hid away because you decided she was too different. And she's been waiting. This whole time. Waiting for you to get tired of being someone else. To realize that you can't live someone else's life forever. That you don't have to meet anyone's standards. Not even the ones you created yourself while looking at her. And now, you're standing at a crossroads. You can keep playing the role. Be the shadow. Be that friend. The one beside. The one who always understands. And then everything will stay the same. Everyone will be happy. Except you. Or, you can take a step. Not against her. But toward yourself. Start saying what you think. Doing what you love. Dressing not how it's trendy. But how it feels right. Posting not filtered photos but the ones where you're real. Remembering what you want. Not what's expected. It won't be easy. Because some people won't understand. Some might be surprised. Maybe even her. The one who got used to you being a certain role in her play. But you are not a role. And not a supporting character. You are your own story. And it begins right here. The paradox is that the closer you come to yourself, the less you need to outshine anyone. The race ends. The comparison fades. The envy disappears. Because you realize, there is no such thing as the better friend and the worse one. There are 2 different universes. And each is priceless in her own way. You didn't lose. You just hadn't heard your own voice for too long. But it was there. All along. And now when you finally look at her, you don't see a rival. Not an idol. Not a goddess. You see a person. Strong. Beautiful. Unreachable. Only in your mind. And now, you're ready to look at her evenly. Without pain. Without suppression. Without fear. Because finally, you've started looking at yourself. A few days go by. Life at first glance hasn't changed. You still talk. Still laugh at silly things. She's still bright, charming, with that same dazzling smile that used to make you feel like a gray backdrop. But there's one thing. Now you know. You are not the backdrop. And you never were. You just hadn't turned on your light for a long time. And now you begin. Slowly. Cautiously. You say no, where you used to stay silent. You speak your mind, even if it doesn't match hers. You choose clothes that you like, not the ones that fit her style. You post something without wondering what she'll think. And suddenly something shifts. First in you, then in her. Because she feels it too. She was used to a different you. Convenient. Transparent. Almost invisible. And now, as you start to glow, in a new way, your own way, she feels a bit uncomfortable. She asks, "Are you mad?" And you answer, "No. I just stopped being silent." And this is not conflict. This is a shift. An earthquake, after which both sides will never be the same. You know what's the most interesting part? You don't shrink if she stays great. And she doesn't shrink if you grow. This isn't a competition. These are two paths that have long run in parallel, now crossing at a new angle. And then in the very moment when you feel balanced, when your eyes no longer seek her approval, no longer measure yourself by her standards, she says, "You know, I always thought you were better than me. You just didn't see it." Those words, they hit. Gently, softly, but still a hit. You don't know what to say. Because for an eternity, you suffered in the shadows, never imagining that in her eyes, you were the light. And now when you no longer need her validation, you receive it. Life has a strange sense of humor, doesn't it? But you're no longer the one who clings to it. Because what matters isn't her opinion. And not even her confession. What matters is that moment when you recognized yourself. Not better, not worse, but simply yourself. That is freedom. To no longer need comparison. To stop seeking approval. To stop chasing someone else's love, forgetting your own. Because your friend, she's not an enemy, not a rival. She's a mirror, in which you finally saw yourself. And this is not the end. It's only the beginning. Time passes. Not days, weeks, maybe months. You no longer track her every move. No longer analyze glances, reactions, likes. You're no longer afraid to be yourself around her. And you know what's most surprising? You still love her. But differently. Without pain. Without trying to prove you're worthy too. Without the feeling that you're always second best. You don't want to replace her. You don't want to be her. Because finally, you want to be yourself. You can sit together in a cafe. And you might be in an old sweater, with no makeup, tired, and still feel beautiful. Not because someone looked at you that way, but because inside, you're no longer in the shadow. You've mastered the most important skill that we're rarely taught. Not to measure yourself through others. Because comparison is always about someone else's scale. And you are not someone's copy. You are an original, with your own shape, texture, and meaning. And now when you hear the phrase, "Your friend is so cool," you smile. Not with a sting, not with pain, but with a warm, sincere joy. Because yes, she is cool, but so are you. And you no longer try to prove it to the world. Because now, you know it. And then one day, you scroll through old photos again. The ones where it's just the two of you. And you don't notice how beautifully she's standing. And not how once again you're off to the side. You see light. Your shared light. Not competition. Not a fight for attention. But connection. Friendship. True. Not born from insecurity but from respect. And then you realize the most important thing. She was never better. She was simply the first person you decided to love more than yourself. And now, you've stopped betraying yourself. And that changes everything. You didn't lose a friend. On the contrary, you became capable of real friendship. Without pain. Without games. Without self-erasure. Now you're not two roles in someone's drama, but two separate women. Each, with her own depth, her own fear, her own inner battle, and her own beauty. Sometimes you'll forget again. On some day, you'll want to compare again. Feel like you're losing again. But now, you'll know. That's not the voice of truth. That is an old shadow. And you can walk past it. Because now you know. You are not lesser. You are you. And in that lies your power. Small orange diamond. If someone had told you this earlier, maybe you wouldn't have believed them. Because everyone has to reach this point on their own. But if you're reading this now, it means you're almost there. And only you can decide to stop or to finally remember yourself. Because in a world where everyone wants to be someone else, the bravest thing is to be yourself. And being yourself is never too late.